Hello, everyone. This is Alex Schiffer of the Kansas City Star. I'm joined alongside my colleague, Blair Kerkhoff. Quiet week on the front for Missouri, but plenty to recap as Barry Odom gets a contract extension. A few more recruiting pieces appear to be in the mix for football next year. Bowl practice underway and basketball goes 3-0. Blair, how you doing?
Good, Alex. And I don't think we've talked since Missouri landed its quarterback of the future as well.
Yes, I believe.
I think that happened. That did happen the day we were talking. I think that night.
Yes, I was staring at my computer aimlessly for about half an hour until he announced. So, yeah, big news. Missouri lands Clemson quarterback Kelly Bryant. He's eligible immediately. Huge get for Barry Odom. And also now, shortly after Jonathan Nance, who was Arkansas's leading receiver last year, another graduate transfer, high school teammate of Rashad Floyd, he commits to Missouri. And now there's talk that Jeff Thomas and Marcus Washington, a pair of wideouts from the St. Louis area, Thomas recently leaving Miami, are also now in the mix. So a lot to digest. My takeaway is that Missouri is all in on next season with the guys they're still trying to get. They lose Drew Lock, they lose Emmanuel Hall, but if this all shakes out, they're going to be very, very deep at every offensive position essentially. And they really appear to be pushing all their chips to the center of the table, and I'm not great with blackjack, but is it a 15 or a 16 you hit on with a face card? Anyway, they're doing that.
So when we were talking about Kelly Bryant last week, and my guess at the time was going to be Auburn, and even the Auburn had changed out its offensive coordinator. They had Auburn, a little bit higher profile program. I just thought the tea leaves were reading Auburn to me, and he makes the decision that night, and I kind of gasped when I saw the Twitter announcement that he made, and it just changed my sense about Barry Odom and this program and the direction that it's going. And I was kind of after this just right at the end of the regular season, I was a little concerned about what Missouri might look like for 2019, and let's suffice to say I'm less concerned about what it might look like next season. It's quite a get. Now, let's not pretend that we're not talking about an All-America quarterback coming in here. Just a solid replacement who is going to get to work with Derek Dooley and with play in the SEC, have play with talented, skilled people around him. It's Missouri's going to help him as much as he's going to help Missouri. But I just think that the statement that it made that he picked Missouri over the list of finalists was very positive for the Tigers. And as you said right afterwards, with Jonathan Johnson making his announcement, and later on even more good news on the recruiting front for the Tigers. Just nothing but positive vibes since the last time we talked, and it changes the way I look at Missouri for next year. My expectations are going to be similarly as high as they were this year, which was I had them at 9-3, and who knows? I mean, I'll have to, without studying the rest of the SEC. But there's, to me, I see no slippage for the Tigers next year. No excuse to take a step back. Keep going forward and keep pushing and try to make noise in the division.
I agree. I haven't looked at the SEC. It's too early to look at the SEC next year anyway, given there's still NFL announcements to happen, still National Signing Day, both of them, the early and the traditional one. A quick look at their schedule, though. I mean, they trade out Alabama as their SEC West opponent for Ole Miss at home. And in the non-conference, I mean, they have SEMO. They have West Virginia, who is a tough team, but will be going through a quarterback change, much like Missouri. And in the East, they are at Georgia, which is the only game I look at and say that will be a very difficult one for them to win. I mean, Stanford Stadium is just traditionally a very tough place to win. So I think, as you said, that the expectation for next year is to flirt with double digits. And the guy that I think really gets under the microscope now is Derek Dooley. I mean, we knew that he called it the Wikipedia offense, where they were going to do a little bit of everything. And this past season, with all the starters he inherited, but Missouri's going to return his top 4 tailbacks as of right now in Crockett, Roundtree, Simi Bakare, and Tyler Beatty, an all-SEC selection. And they add a dual-threat quarterback in Kelly Bryant. To me, and again, if they do get Jeff Thomas, I'm told Missouri will likely get him and to join a loaded receiving core. To me, if you're Derek Dooley, you make this a much more you make this an offense that I don't want to say it's like the wishbone and they're running a lot, but it definitely puts a lot more emphasis and creativity in the run than they have been in recent years.
Yeah, it does. It'll be different than what we've seen this year, but at least you'll know that you're operating with an experienced veteran guy back there, not a freshman who you've got to grow the offense with in a transitional. It's basically next year's a transitional quarterback year, right? And Missouri did about as well as a program can do with a bridge to the next generation of quarterbacks with Kelly Bryant. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it shakes out with the Tigers but there's a little bit of work to do here left this season, right? With Drew Lock and what they've got going with the bowl game. We did have the bowl game identified by the last time we talked. I think I mentioned then that I wasn't thrilled with the matchup. I was hoping for something, maybe in the Big Ten or just a little bit more higher profile. But I do like that it's a drivable location for Missouri fans playing Oklahoma State in the Liberty Bowl, and I would really love to see the Kansas City kid go out with a victory and 9 wins and hand off a team to his successor that where the bar is set that high, and I think that it would be an upset if it wasn't if Missouri didn't come out of this bowl game with a win.
Yeah, it's Drew Lock's legacy. Obviously, it is still kind of being defined as he's yet to play his final game for the Tigers. But I think, and this has been the chatter among the beat writers that I think really works, is that if Missouri goes and wins 10 games next year, Drew Lock's legacy will get better with age, as kind of Brad Smith did. He was kind of the guy that got them out of the cellar and got them out of this rut, and really got Gary Pinkel's tenure going at Missouri. And I think that Drew Lock can write a similar script, especially if he has a lot of NFL success too, and he's a guy Missouri's pointing to routinely when they have recruits coming in, as look at what came through here. And I think that given what Missouri has set up for next season, if they can flirt with 10 wins, a New Year's Six bowl, a SEC East title, I think those are all going to be in the picture. I'm not saying they all happen, but I think that that's what the expectations will be, depending upon how the roster shakes out in the rest of the conference. And I think that that's what Drew Lock's legacy could be with Missouri and Barry Odom's program, is that he came in under Gary Pinkel. His freshman year went rough, both on and off the field, between the protests, and obviously he wasn't a central figure in that, but just the team in general. And then Pinkel leaving, they didn't make a bowl game. He struggled mightily. And then he kind of got his act together as the career went on and really kind of flourished and laid the foundation for what Barry Odom would do after he left. So that's kind of how I think that Kelly Bryant also can help affects the current team. Before we switch over to some basketball talk, this all kind of is relative to Barry Odom's contract extension, which was announced the day after Kelly Bryant. He doesn't need the money, Blair, but he really should have bought a lottery ticket last week. I think that was happening to him.
Yeah, it's a good week.
He went from 14th to 11th among the SEC's highest-paid coaches. Is now making around a little over $3 million, 3.05. Contract runs till the end of 2024 now. A couple years tacked on the last year's deal. I I think it's fair to say this is what we were expecting. Right? I mean, a couple years tacked on. His incentives are a little more now, especially if he gets Missouri regularly ranked in the AP poll, coaches, college football playoff. That's an extra $5,000, and his incentive pool and his assistant coach pool both go up. I kind of thought this was par for the course. I didn't expect him to get Nick Saban money. No one did. That wouldn't be justified. But I expected him around that $3.5 million range.
It's a good number for the head football coach at Missouri who has the type of experience that Barry Odom has, and which is to say, none in the head coaching world until he got to Mizzou. It's funny to me that just at midseason or whenever the South Carolina and the Kentucky games fell after they got through those, we were wondering if he was going to even be back next season. The way things felt, especially after the Kentucky loss at home, and I think it was a fair question, even though it looked like the schedule was going to get easier over the final month of the season. They had lost their one of their preseason goals, which was to have a double-digit victory season and make a really attractive bowl game. And I think the fan base was kind of down on Barry, and it was okay and fair to ask if he was the guy. This is, did he? He wasn't, in his short time at Missouri, he wasn't winning close games and had losses that were inexplicable, and Drew Lock wasn't performing well against the better defenses that he was facing, and you just wondered if Barry Odom was the right guy. But not just the wins in the last month of the season, but the way he won and going to Florida and dominating, a Florida team that that's going to a nice bowl game and just embarrassing a couple other opponents gave Missouri fans a good feeling about the way the season ended, gave them a good feeling about Barry Odom. And, he still has to live up to it, though. And every year it's the SEC. There's no, there is no conference where the pressure is greater than the SEC. And even with a contract extension in his back pocket, that doesn't mean he can go out and go 5-7 next year and expect to be the coach the following season. That's just not how it goes in this conference. So he deserved what he got. I'm happy for him. I do think he's the right guy for Missouri right now, but it is a tough conference, and you just don't know what the future is going to bring. I have every confidence, though, that he's with the new acquisitions here in the last week or so, couple weeks, the arrow is pointing up at Missouri, and until that happened, I didn't know which way the arrow was pointing. If it was pointing sideways or even down a little bit, but it seems to be pointing up right now for the Tigers.
Hey, it's Blair Kerkhoff, and if you're listening to this, you love Kansas City sports, whether it's the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting, Mizzou, KU, or K-State. And no one covers these teams like the Kansas City Star. If you currently subscribe to the paper or have a digital subscription, thank you for your support. And if you don't, here's a great offer. It's called Sports Pass, unlimited digital access to every sports story and video on kansascity.com. And it's just $30 for the first year. It's the best sports value in town, just 8 cents a day or $2.50 a month. You can't beat that. Subscribe now at kansascity.com/sportspass.
I agree. Before we get out of here, it's a shorter edition this week. We both have. I just got pinged by the boss. I was about to go stake out a courthouse over the Trey Williams stuff, and now we can maybe touch on that after this. But I'm getting pinged back to my headquarters, aka my apartment. I expect to be able to write soon. Basketball goes 3-0 last week. We talked after the UCF win, and we didn't expect much trouble for Missouri against Oral Roberts or Texas Arlington. That appeared to be the case. You're better with this stuff than me, but a couple things. Missouri is now in a position, if you ask me, where they can run the table the rest of the non-conference schedule. And I personally think that the NIT could be back in the picture for them. I was watching Seton Hall on Saturday. I have the best interest in them. I've given you a few licks in my past. I don't know if you know Kevin Willard, the Seton Hall coach, lived a couple houses up from me back in the town of Westfield, New Jersey. So I've known Kevin a long time, and unbelievable game if you didn't see it. Seton Hall won in overtime. 2-1. Last 5 seconds were ridiculous. But the bigger picture coming out of that, people are wondering why we're still talking about me, but the SEC has been very underwhelming in the big picture of non-conference play. Florida was looked at as a pretty good team. They've had a lot of losses, as has Kentucky, which did not look like a top 10 team. And we can go, Vanderbilt lost Darius Garland. And, you know, I've done a look on Xavier, even though they don't play for another week. The Big East is another conference that's just wide open right now with the way Villanova's losing. They lost to Penn last night at the Palestra. And the one stat that kind of caught my eye a bit with Xavier was that they're the worst three-point defense in the Big East. Teams are shooting nearly 38% on them, and Missouri's obviously the highest three-point shooting team in the SEC right now. So I think it's a game that Missouri can get. You know, I've been actively recruiting for you to join me at Bragging Rights on the 22nd. You know, that Illinois style of play is very Turner-heavy when it comes to how they set their defense and their presses. That kind of scares me a bit from Missouri, but I just think that game is going to be unbelievable. Missouri's going to start 3 former Illinois signees/players in Pickett, Mark Smith, and Jeremiah Tillman. And I just think that the atmosphere in that building is going to be through the roof. And the water crappy as usual. But I think that Missouri's in a position here where if they run the table the rest of the Illinois head state, and the way the SEC is, if they can go 7-11 or flirt with 500 in SEC play and win the games they should, pick off a few on the road against teams like Georgia that are struggling and are expected to have a down year, I don't see how they, you know, I think they can finish 17-13 or in that range to maybe sneak in the NIT. And if you're Conzo Martin, given the way you thought you were going to have the season with Jonte Porter, I'd take that.
Yeah, look, first things first, right? Xavier's is the next game, and I found myself watching. They were on the other night against Cincinnati, so I found myself watching a few segments of that game, and they looked terrible. I mean, in a big rivalry game that is, I just, and it was at Cincinnati, so the Bearcats had that advantage, but Xavier just didn't look like they belonged on the floor with UC, and I think Cincinnati ended up winning by 15, but it would never really seem that close. So that's a game when I looked at it in the preseason, thought, you know, one of the more attractive non-conference opponents for the Tigers, but that looks more winnable now to me than it did before. I like where Missouri's head is. They should be good confidence-wise. They, you know, the maybe the two worst or 2 of the 3 worst non-conference opponents they blew out, or 2 of the worst 4. They did what you're supposed to do, you know, against UTA and Oral Roberts and beat them pretty handily. Xavier's coming up. You mentioned Xavier in Illinois, and then Morehead State's the last one that they play before getting into conference play. I like how this. I like what I'm seeing from the Tigers. I like how they you know, they're. I was worried about the perimeter shooting going into the year. I'm less worried about that now. The way that they've performed. Jordan Geist was a guy who I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in entering the year, and I feel better about him right now. And you know, it's the quality of the level of competitions allowed Tillman to play better and less foul trouble. So, you know, the next 2 opponents are real opponents, Xavier and Illinois. Whether there's, you know, neither one is an NCAA tournament team this year, and I don't think Missouri is, at least at this point right now. So, you know, one's at home and one's at the, you know, neutral side in St. Louis. If Missouri can get these 2 and then handle Morehead State and go into SEC play with just would it be 3 non-conference losses? You're right. I mean, this is a team that you can think about for postseason play. The SEC's not having a great start outside of Tennessee and Auburn, I guess, and maybe this is a year where the better coaching prevails, and not not the talent level. And I'm behind Conzo Martin as a coach. So, look, you never know what can shake out in conference play. You go 10-8 or 11-7, and who knows what can happen. I did watch the end of that Seton Hall Kentucky game. That was an amazing finish, by the way, and a game that Kentucky had more talent on the floor but found a way to lose it at the end. And it's just seems like another young Kentucky team that's going to have to learn how to win if it's going to compete for the national championship.
I agree. I thought of your Twitter picture with you standing in shock at the Buddy Hield shot. I thought that was very applicable to that ending. And last thing I was going to touch on, Trey Williams, Missouri defensive end, arrested for suspicion of domestic assault. We'll have more details on that probably coming soon. It's obviously been a very big topic in the football community, especially with our paper between now this and Kareem Hunt. I think it's a little bit of an interesting situation because, Barry Odom came out with a very big stance early on as head coach when Keon DeLosa, he kicked him off the team the day after DeLosa was arrested for punching a woman in the face outside a bar. And obviously, details will kind of come with this in time. I think it's just an interesting situation because, if Barry Odom were to kick off Williams, depending upon what comes out, I think he'd be a coach that is currently putting a pretty hard stance on domestic violence issues when around the football world, you're not seeing that as much. Vahe's column, I thought, spoke a lot to that, and there's been some other pieces out there, especially Sam Mellinger, that we've done. And I think if he lets Williams back on the team, again, we'll see the context, but I think that it kind of rubs some of the shine off of how good Barry looked from the DeLosa incident a couple years ago. So I think it's kind of an interesting hand he's holding right now. And again, maybe the details come out and it kind of forces it one way or the other, but am I kind of crazy thinking that it could be an interesting thing with how this plays out?
Well, I do. It's one of those topics or one of those issues where I think I've heard Barry Odom say there's no gray area for him, and players don't seem to get the benefit of the doubt once action has occurred. So I think that's the tenor of the times. It's the way I think it's the way it should be. I know that's where your attention is going to be focused here after we finish talking, but I think it's the right stance. You mentioned what the Chiefs did with Kareem Hunt, and I'll say even to the school further west at Kansas with Puka Williams, their great freshman running back, was dismissed from the team when he faced a similar charge. So there is just what we're seeing in football, at least here in this area, is just zero tolerance for this type of behavior, and it's not like we're in the season where we talk about a 1 or 2 game suspension. The season's over, and decisions have to be made about bowl games and where players stand with the team. But I do like the sentiment of no gray area and zero tolerance, and it's. There's always there's always two sides to every story, and we need to be aware of that and sensitive to it. But as far as I'm concerned, just as we saw with the Chiefs and with their action with Kareem Hunt, Barry Odom did the right thing, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Agreed. And with that, we both have places to be. I will see you tomorrow night at Sunday Night Football, and. With that, he's Blair Kerkhoff. I'm Alex Schiffer. We'll be back next week. And 2 times in less than a week, I would have seen you tomorrow, Blair. We should do this more often.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to seeing you at the Chiefs game Thursday night.
Awesome. Take care.